yourself, it's fine. But it makes it seem more normal. Not very.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm like,
This is a
there's a
formal.
gun to my head. I need to ask you a
This is
question.
this is
Yeah,
a formal
that's yeah,
interview.
very normal. Yeah, whatever you do.
My name is Marie, and I'm 28 years young. Mental health is emotional, sociological, and psychological well-being of a person. So essentially, what affects your decisions, what affects your moods, pretty much all of that. Just your well-being in general. It has been interesting. I have dealt with depression since I was a kid and PTSD since I was 20 from sexual assault. So there are days, most of the time, that are good, but sometimes there are days that makes you feel not normal and broken. But I think that would be my experience. When you're young, you don't really understand it. You feel different, especially if you feel deeply, and you can't understand why. You don't know that there's like this thing that explains the way that you feel and that you're not the only one. So when you're young, it's really hard, but as you get older and realize that other people deal with the same thing that you do, it becomes easier. I have not been diagnosed with mental illness, but I do know that a lot of my symptoms deal with depression. I began to struggle when I was 10 with depression and not really wanting to be alive. And I wasn't necessarily suicidal. I just didn't feel the need to be alive. I was like nothing matters. I was very nihilistic. I didn't think that the world needed me. I was like, I didn't think I would make a difference, and I didn't think I would be missed. And I dealt with that for a long time. And middle school is brutal, and when you're bullied a lot, that doesn't help it either. So since I was 10, I think I really dealt with it. I don't think it was any singular trauma as a kid. I think it was a lot of experiences of an emotionally abusive mother, and being bullied also doesn't help. And when you grow up in the military, you move around a lot, so you're always the new kid. So trying to make new friends and make a new friend group and being that different person doesn't help, where you're kind of like the odd kid out. So that's really hard as a kid because you're dealing with a lot and you're trying to figure out who you are. And then I think that's what made it really hard, was being the new kid and just constantly being like, oh, you're the new kid and you're not our friend and you don't know anything and you're not part of our group. And then in middle school it was really bad because middle school girls are brutal. And when boys like you, then they get jealous and it's like, I'm just friends with them. And I was severely bullied, and that was not helpful either, especially when you aren't getting help from adults and you're asking for it and they just like, oh, it's just normal middle school things. So I think there are many different methods of treatment, and I think people just need to find what works best for them and not to negate the treatment just because therapy didn't work for you or you don't want to do therapy doesn't mean it won't work for someone else. And not to compare your experiences and your pain or mental illness to someone else's, because you don't know it's going to work. So I personally don't take medication. I personally don't go to therapy. I've pretty much dealt with it on my own. And some people would say that's not healthy and that's not okay, but they don't know my experiences and I don't know theirs. Like, therapy may be really beneficial for someone, but I just figured it out, and I sought therapy through like reading and just learning more about what I was dealing with and figuring it out that way rather than going to see a professional. So I think it's finding whatever works best for you and giving it a chance at least and seeing the best method for yourself. So I think, like I said, there's so many different things and resources, and I think now especially that it's becoming more normalized, that it's okay to ask for help, that there's more resources readily available for people, and it's just deciding to take that chance. Just taking the time for myself, either working out or dancing. Years ago when it was a really bad time in my life, the only thing that really helped me was my friends and dancing. A lot of people didn't know I was in a lot of pain. They didn't know what I was going through, and the one thing that I like maintained doing for myself was showing up for dance and showing up for my dance team. And I think for me it was doing something for other people to make them happy, because then if I can make them happy and make their life like a little bit better, then maybe my life wasn't so bad. It's so stigmatized and people think it's so dirty. Um, they don't want to be seen as weak. Like I hate being seen as weak and vulnerable. And if people know that you're suffering, then maybe it can be used against you. Um, and I think that's the biggest thing, at least in our culture, that people don't want to talk about it, and there's such a negative connotation to it because we have such a culture of always being strong and always being a fighter and never giving up. But sometimes never giving up is realizing that you have to take a step back and take care of yourself before you can keep moving forward. I think I can speak to me and to others. For me, I hid a lot of my pain and I pretended I was happy and I didn't talk about it with people, especially as I got older as an adult, and especially after being sexually assaulted. I haven't told many people, and I still don't, just because I don't want to share that pain and vulnerability. So I think a lot of people hide their pain, and unless you've been through it yourself, you can't recognize the triggers. So for me, when I hid it a lot, I was being more self-destructive and not being my actual self, and I wasn't doing things that I loved as much, like art or dancing or anything that made me who I was. And I think when someone starts retracting from who they are as a person or things that they love, that is definitely a warning sign. And for me, as a trigger too, like I know I would start going into like a depressive episode if I'm not doing the things that I like to do. Like if I stop working out and I just don't have the energy for it, or I just don't take the time for myself anymore and doing like even just self-care, um, then I know it's like this is not good and this is going to start going down that path. But it took years to understand that that was a pattern and that would lead to an episode or period of time where it was hard and depression. So I would say you don't have to be. You don't have to be suffering in silence, because I've done it and it's really hard. It's really painful. And you don't have to share your story with people. You don't have to share your pain. But what you should do is eventually deal with it. So if you don't want to share your pain with someone and what you're going through with your mental illness, you don't have to, but it's eventually you, like I said, you have to deal with it. So it's like you're not alone and that you're not a burden, and that other people probably have gone through what you've gone through, maybe not to the same extent of your own experience, but the biggest thing is you're not alone, and you don't have to be. No. um, I think this video is really similar to the journey I've had over the past 10 years and or more. Um, especially in the past 8 years since I was sexually assaulted, that was on top of everything else that was going on in my life. I eventually moved past it and I healed from it, and sharing my story with people slowly and helping them through their pain helped me too. And I just hope that this video helps people as well. And that, like I said, you don't have to share your story if you don't want to, but I really wanted to share my story to as much as I could, because I think, yeah, like it has helped me realize that I am stronger than I was, because I didn't know if I would ever want to like publicly talk about my issues that I've dealt with, and I've always like very much acted like, oh yeah, I'm very strong and I don't have these issues, but I think it's being okay with saying like, yeah, I have these issues publicly and that I've dealt with them and I still deal with them. You know, they never go away. It's just some days are harder than others, but it's wanting to help normalize it for others, that again, that they're not alone and that there are people that will understand, and if you want help or you want support, that it's there.